Hey, it's Cornfu. Today I'm going to take you through quickly a process of taking one of my Photoshop files and converting it for use as a screen for printing t-shirts. So I'm going to go from pixel based to vector. So let's just jump right in. First step, open up the Photoshop file. I've already pre-created this. I put a lot of details and textures and things like that. So I'm going to go in and simplify that. So I'm turning off all the layers here. Always make sure you name your layers. Turning those off, getting the piece that I want to select, which is the runner. I'm going to start with her. I select Command A, and then to copy, or to select all, and then Command C to copy. I paste that into Illustrator. Once I'm in Illustrator, I will open up the image trace function. And that allows me to select that layer and then pick some presets and then adjust those. I picked black and white for the mode, and then I start messing with the threshold, which is the sensitivity of it, and then also corners, noise, things like that. You can sit and mess with those. I always go higher on the lower on the noise and higher on the corners and paths, and then kind of medium on the threshold. That gives me a pretty good accurate representation of what I've illustrated in ink. Once I have that, I'm going to paste that into Illustrator, which you're seeing here. You can see when it highlights pink and there's all these little dots everywhere. That means it's been expanded. I copied it, pasted it, traced it, expanded it. And it basically creates, Illustrator creates all these little points that define that. It's all mathematical, not pixel based. And then I start exploring the fill colors, the thick outline around it, because I want to do a cartoony style. So you always, well, for me, I like that thick outline around stuff. The zombies have to have a little less thick line on the back. And you can see me messing with it here. And then the runner's going to have a thicker line. That's going to pull her forward in the front of the scene. Zombies will be pushed back a little bit. So they'll be gray and muted. She'll be more colorful, thicker line. Here I'm kind of eyeballing it, looking to make sure it looks right. At this point, I'm noticing that her outlining, her internal outlining, looks a little thick and chunky. I don't like that. I want it to be a little bit more detailed. Since I drew this by hand initially, I want it to look like that and not necessarily too smooth and thick. Anyway, here I'm cleaning up some of the extra little pieces that got traced. So now I have this black outline, and I have these thick, or these isolated islands inside of that, which I can then select with the selection tool and colorize. I jump back into Photoshop. I select the colors and then jump back into Illustrator and use those colors. My Photoshop file is RGB as well as my Illustrator file, so the colors should be pretty close. Okay, again, I'm selecting, trying to make sure I select all the right things. Like the skin tone is going to be gray, the outfit's going to be lighter. Now, the reason I'm making the skin cone gray is because I'm limited to 4 colors with this shirt. So I'm going to use black, as the shirt is going to be black, so that's going to be my one color. That's my cheat. The eyes, they're white. There's little highlight pieces. Eyes and text are going to be white. Skin tones are going to be a version of gray. And then I've got 2 different pinks. On this one, I still have 3 different versions of pink, but I'm going to kind of simplify that even further as I get into this shirt to make sure it works. So I don't have to call the class, hey, actually, we should probably make this 5 or 6 colors. I don't think they want to hear that. But okay, again, I paste in the Photoshop copy, the whole thing, into the background of Illustrator as a guide reference. And I think I named the layer guide. That way I can make sure that I'm positioning everything right, because I'm jumping back and forth. I mean, I could technically select the whole thing, paste that into Illustrator and trace it. That's chaos. I want more control. So I want to trace the runner, the zombies, the background's an element, the little COVID guys are an element. I've jumped back in and I've recopied her. I'm going to bring her back in because, like I said, I noticed she's a little too thick. So here, I'm going to change the paths, the corners, and the noise and the threshold to make it a little softer, which you can see there, and it looks a lot better. So now, once again, I got to go back in and kind of recolor those chunks of islands of shapes that are inside of her. Yeah, it's a fun process. It's tedious. And once you get into it, whenever you see me select one of the layers, you see all those little dots. Those are the points. It's all mathematical. You can actually simplify those. You could, I think it's under Edit. You can select an object, make sure it's selected first, and then go to this thing called Simplify. It's halfway down the list. Select that, and then there's a little slider bar. So you can really super simplify it or partially simplify it. And Simplify will take all those points and reduce them as much as possible while still maintaining that shape. If you go too far, you're going to break down on the shape. There's a happy little medium. You have to play with it, and you can see. And you can set the settings to have show you the new points and the old points. That way you can do a visual comparison pretty quickly. Here I'm cleaning up all the little inside bits because I want a solid shape that's her silhouette, because that's what I'm going to use to put a thicker outline around her. Again, using that thicker outline to pull her out and separate her from the zombie horde. So now I have a solid shape. I call this outer line. There's a fill. There's an outer thicker line. I name them whatever that makes sense to me, because I'm going to go back and turn layers on and off and sample them and all that fun stuff. Here I'm adding some details to her eyes. Now, normally I would go in and obsess over this. I would clean up and make sure that I would have eyelashes and all these little extra details. But because this is a silk screen on a shirt, I'm not super worried about it. I want it to look hand-drawn, but it doesn't have to be perfect. If this was a giant print piece, I would go in and either stick with the original Photoshop file, or I would go and really super clean this up. Here I'm kind of adding in some thick areas so that the fill is consistent. It's little teeny tedious cleanup, and you can go crazy on this, or you can kind of do just enough. Here's kind of a just enough. There's little teeny areas that will really bother me that I'll have to get rid of. But then once I'm close enough, I'll feel pretty happy. And then I'll move on to something else. Because remember, you're going to be looking at this at a whole. You're not going to be looking at it super close. If this was a giant poster, yes. It's a t-shirt, no. And to that point, your t-shirts, from what I've been told, I'm not a giant t-shirt expert, but you want to keep your details a little bit bigger than 1 pixel. 1 pixel is almost too small, because once you make the screen, you can lose some of those little teeny details. Now, digital printing might be different, but with regular silk screen, the thinner those lines are, it's easy to lose those details. Again, it's all about that happy medium of what you want to push and what you want to pull to make sure that it has the right look. And you being the artist, you're going to be the most hypercritical about it, so take a breath, relax. Okay, now I paste the little COVID guys in there. They're part of the horde. And now I'm just going to resize them, drag them around. Now here's where you can see me start messing with the thickness. I'm trying to get it as close to the original drawing as possible, but it's a little off, and that's okay. Little translation issues. If you notice, the middle biggest COVID guy, his lines are really thick, his outer line. So I'll go back and I'll fix that, because that's going to drive me nuts. Yeah, he's too thick. When you look at it as a whole, and that one really stands out. If that's what you want, great. If not, yeah, you got to change the weight of that. All right, so I'm looking at the background. We're really going to have to simplify the background. Okay, now I'm doing a background trace. You can see like it was really cool, and there's all these little nuances, and now there's not. It still has a really cool gritty feel to it, and I'm okay with that. So again, I mess with the threshold, the corners. I turn the noise down for whatever reason. That gives you a lot more detail. If you turn the noise up, it gets rid of what it sees as noise. Sometimes noise could be detail. Okay, now I'm pasting this in the background, just kind of looking at where these pieces are at. And you can see the orange little dots. That's all the points. Like, I could really go in and simplify that. At this point, the program's not crashing, so I'm just going to leave it as is. If I simplify the background too much, it's going to lose that gritty texture, and I don't want that to happen. So I think I can push it here. Now I have some open spots. I mean, it technically is divided into thirds. The black, where she's running, is a third, and the pink sky behind the zombies is 2/3. And I kind of have her centered, so her face falls in the middle third. And that gives a nice bounce. Okay, so now I'm dropping in. I jumped ahead. I'm dropping in vector pieces that I already had existing for a previous T-shirt. This run became virtual because of COVID, so therefore the T-shirt that I originally did was no longer any good. It's not relevant. So we decided to update it. And here I'm putting a thicker outline around the COVID busting around the pink text, because I have pink on pink. Obviously that's not going to work. So I put this thick black line because I want to pull that out with her, so she's running with that run. And then the pop, what I want people to see is the Nick Mauer's 6th annual 5K. So Nick Mowers was a local artist, and he passed away from a brain aneurysm. And he was big into the arts, so his friends got together and created a memorial fund, a 5K run, that the donations and proceeds from that go to scholarships for up-and-coming artists, which I think is super, super awesome. So I was happy to help out with this. Okay, and also some of the proceeds go to a local dog park, which I think is really cool too. And then Nick Mowers, his logo is a little teeny anvil. He did a lot of custom jewelry, hence the little teeny jewelry anvil. Okay, so here I'm kind of balancing it out, moving pieces around. Now, originally I made this piece of artwork for social media only, and it was a square. It was a 2400 by 2400, and that's great. But the issue with that is when I went to make it a T-shirt, that's an 8.5 by 8 inch area. So I had to reduce everything. And again, this comes back to make sure that your details are not smaller than 1 pixel, because so you'll lose that, and that's a waste of detail. Anyway, it turned out pretty cool, I think. Once the T-shirt gets produced, I will definitely post a photo of it on my Instagram account on Cornfu. Questions, suggestions, or criticism, that's fine. Leave a comment below, and I will try to address them or ignore them. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.